Britain may be broken, but the breakers of Britain themselves break when this party wins, particularly when the former leader of the National Front, Andrew Brons, was elected to the European Parliament. The nausea amongst New Labour supporters that thing created, they were choking with the emotion of it, the negative emotion of it, the night of that victory on radio and television, beamed across the world. This is the impact that these sorts of votes can have, and ought to have, from now and into the future. Many British men are fighting tonight in Afghanistan. They're fighting in Helmand, which is a desert in southeast Afghanistan with a jungle in the middle of it. You go out of the desert and into the jungle and you're into full-on violence. The violence that they're experiencing is equivalent to the severest fighting of the Korean War, which the Gloucester Regiment engaged in the early 1950s with some detachments from Ulster and elsewhere, and of course South Korean and American allies. They were fighting against Maoists from China and North Korean troops who would behead any prisoner and cut their head off and cut their eyes out. That's what war involves. That's what sometimes happens to people if they're captured by Taliban in Helmand. Now, this war is unwinnable, and our politicians know that it is. And they believe that if we leave now, Al-Qaeda will come back, this network that flew the planes into the towers and into the Pentagon a decade ago and changed the nature of the world. However, my contention, and the contention of this party, is you don't destroy Al-Qaeda by bludgeoning a third world state like Afghanistan, where they're born gun in hand, where they fight for every valley, and where, as the Berkshire Regiment proved in the 1890s, never mind now, they are basically can't be conquered in their own territory. They move away from you if you're too powerful, they put roadside bombs, today's weapon of choice, in the way, and then they come back when you've gone. The way to defeat these insurgent movements is to get amongst them with special forces, is to know where they are, is to destabilise them using the special boat service and the special air service. These are the people that you use. You don't invade a country, you remove yourself. And if they threaten our streets, and if they bring their bombs and bullets and explosives here, we make sure we have special forces to deal with them. That's how you fight irregular, paramilitary, guerrilla war. You do it cleverly and with pluck, rather than in some bludgeoning sort of a way, which at its worst replicates what the United States did in Vietnam, mass terror bombing and the rest of it, and then you lose. And then you leave humiliated, as they were forced to, in a war that's rarely mentioned now, I notice. We must fight our own wars that are in our interest, not in America's interest. We're not a satellite of the United States. We should be a proud and independent, middle-ranking country. Argentina is growling again because more oil than is in the North Sea has been discovered off the Falklands, thereby proving those dissidents that said 30 years ago, when I was a very young man, that the Falklands War was fought about fuel. The Falklands War couldn't be fought now because we don't have the Navy to do it, by virtue of the fact that we've declined as a society to such a degree since then. But all the men who fought, 16,000 men, have fought under our colours in the micro-wars since 1945 and have perished doing so. The purpose of this party, in this era, not 45 and before, but in the era then we're alive, the purpose of this party is to make sure that those 16,000 deaths were not in vain, and that their widows and relatives were not left in want for nothing at all. That these flags that you see around you in this auditorium this evening, here in the north of England, mean something. That when the soldier is buried and his casket is draped with these symbols, it actually means something to those who are left, and who will follow them, and who will hope to see a government which represents them in the future. A government which will be more British, more glorious, in some ways kinder, in others harsher than that exists at the moment. In all areas of life, Britain is in decline and needs a shake-up. And this is the only political party which envisages it in a manner which is possible for us at this time. I ask you to get out and leaflet for this party, to help to pay for its election expenses in this night here in Wigan. I ask you to give your support to the candidates who come forward to stand in Wigan, Leigh and elsewhere. I ask you to make sure that when the ballot is before you, you vote for the British National Party, your parents do, your immediate family does, your extended family does, and you tell people at work and you tell people socially that you voted for this party. You don't say that when somebody asks you, and you did vote for British National Party, no, I voted Labour, or I don't know, I've sort of voted for some independent, or I didn't vote anyway, or it's raining, I didn't turn out, and that sort of thing. You say with a degree of pride that you voted for this party. You voted for Britain's future and for its children. Think of those children in Hackney. Think of them too white to a class that is not. Think of what that will be like 50 years from now, 70 years from now, 130 years from now, if no changes are made. So there's a degree to which Wigan will follow where Hackney has gone. There is no escape. Each area of the country lags in various ways, 30 years, 50 years, 40 years, 20 years, behind the Leicesters that I talked of earlier. Don't sort of pity the people of Leicester. Look to what has happened there as an example, and Birmingham as well. If anyone wants to see what this country has become, go to the centre of London for a day, it's only a day trip, stand in Piccadilly Circus, look at the 9 elevators going up and down. Look at the fact that 90% of the people on them are from elsewhere in the world, and see Britain's future demographically there. Unless something is done, the Tories say there will be a cap. It is meaningless. Meaningless. They've said these things for 40 years. When Enoch Powell made the speeches in the late 1960s, the whole world heard, and England heard. Here was a man, he was an academic, he was an intellectual. Many of his audiences didn't, in all truth, have that much in common with him, but they understood instinctively what he was saying. When soccer fans chanted his name throughout the early 1970s, everybody knew. Everybody knew what he meant. And isn't Enoch Powell right? Wasn't he right in what he said? Wasn't he right in what he said about the nature of this country and what would happen in relation to the next couple of decades? He died a while back, but the future which is coming to bear upon us all here in Wigan and Leigh and elsewhere is such a one that his memory, and the memory of the people of the National Front in the 1970s, and the memory of the people who founded the British National Party, many of whom are more radical than the present policies of this party, because this party has had to moderate, to adapt to the circumstances of the democracy in which it finds itself. I want the BNP vote in this election, which will be 6 weeks from now. I want it to be bigger than last time. I want to be bigger than last time in the north of England, in the south of England, in the east of England, in the west of England, in Scotland, in Wales, even tangentially in Ulster. I will ask you for the last time to put your hands in your pockets later this evening to support this party so that it can run candidates to get bigger votes in the 3 constituencies around you. Thank you very much.